Hi, I'm Andrew Schierberg with Stages Elder Law and Estate Planning, and I'm here today with Stacey Thornberry with Homewatch Caregivers. And we thought we'd have a conversation about, the kind of things that some of the unfortunate side effects of the holidays, which would be realizing that you have a family member who maybe needs more care than they're receiving, and what to do about that. So Stacey, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it.
So I really appreciate that. I can tell you just over the holidays what we've noticed and what adult children have called in and talked to us about. And we all always tell them to look for certain things to maybe introduce that conversation a little bit. It's going to be hard because mom and dad want to remain independent at home all the time. So I think it's important that adult children, when they come in, even if it's for the holidays, if it's for a weekend, or even when they're living far away, they can kind of just do assessments on the phone intermittently, so it's not picked up on as much. But I think it's important that adult kids are looking at mom and dad and noticing maybe that their fridge has expired items in it, their laundry's piling up, they might have some bruises on their skin, or they might have unexplained burns, things like that. And so that should be able to prompt some soft questions to mom and dad. Kind of what's going on, or how did you get that, and tell me a little bit about your routine for the day, what that looks like. Or, hey mom, I noticed you haven't gotten your mail in a week at least, what's going on there? And if she kind of just starts to give you some signs like I'm sore when I get up, or I've decided to start sleeping in later, and I nothing really is important out there, but really in fact there are important things out there, just some telltale signs that there might be something that's changing in their routine. And you might need to start taking notes and taking a little bit of an assessment, and then kind of call and talk to me or talk to one of my directors and just notice what we deal with every day. It's not common to a lot of adult children. It's a new territory, but we deal with it every day, and we're able to kind of give some signs and maybe, suggestions like pick up the rugs around the house, or maybe they might need a cane or a walker. It doesn't mean that you're removing their independence, but there's baby steps to take in advance of just going straight in with a hard conversation of, you're getting old, we're moving you, and that's it. They're going to be very resistant to that.
Yeah, that was one of the things we talked about earlier is, if we have sort of progressive conversations as we realize that there's something going on, it makes those conversations a lot less traumatic for everybody involved, I think. And it does make them easier conversations to have. It's a lot easier to talk about the little bits than it is to go from, someone who's living at home and fully independent, all of a sudden they need to move into a facility.
Right.
I think that's a really important point that, if we kind of watch for those signs along the way and have those conversations as we go, the outcomes can be better.
Right, absolutely.
Do you all see a pickup around the holidays in calls?
We do.
Yeah.
This past holiday, we gained probably 300 hours in a month, which is really good, but it's also just the sign that people are coming in for the holidays and they're noticing that mom and dad need some help, and they want to get everything established in that month, roughly, that they're home, or a couple weeks that they're home, so that they know they can go back to work, because a lot of them are taking care of their own children and their parents. So we do notice that, and it's definitely something we have extra staff on hand so that we're able to go out and give those free assessments. And we're always available on the phone, because a lot of times we might get calls at 5 or 6 o'clock at night after, a work day, or after, dinner. They want to just call and see if this is common, if this is something that we can help with, things like that.
So when someone's called you and you go into a situation, can you tell, or can your caregivers tell, maybe when a family's waited too long to make that call, and what happens in that situation?
So I'll give you an example. If someone's waited too long and they are giving us a call, we go in, we do the assessment, and we're noticing things, right? When we're sitting there, we're noticing the demeanor of the client, if their memories might be a problem, or we're kind of looking around the room to see if things are building up, or if they've been changed, if they've been bathing. So as we're sitting there, we're doing these internal assessments. And I think when we go in, we're able to see this person hasn't had a shower or bath in 3 or 4 weeks. That's definitely a problem. And they might not be telling the family member that, but when we go in, we're able to see that. And a lot of times we walk in and we end up finding out that the client has a UTI. There's a lot of symptoms of a UTI that surface that every day, if you're not in this world, you don't recognize it. And then when you find out there is a UTI, you have to have immediate treatment, so that because it goes into a lot of the mental problems and a lot of change of demeanor, and it can get angry or it can get aggressive, and we don't want that. We want them to get treatment right away.
I've seen families who have thought their loved one had dementia or Alzheimer's setting in, and it turns out it was
UTI,
an undiagnosed UTI, and it can manifest in so many different ways.
Right.
It might be helpful for people that are watching this for us to take a step back and, we've talked a little bit about the signs that someone might need some additional care, but there's lots of different types of care out there. I mean, obviously there's family members who are giving care, and then there's professional organizations like yours, but even within the professional scope, there's different types of care. So can you maybe go into some of an explanation of that, the types of care you provide, the other types that are out there, maybe when each type is appropriate?
Right. That's a great question and a great topic for us to kind of segue into. So a lot of times when the phone rings, people are asking if we can give shots for diabetes, or if we can do wound care, or if we can work with a colostomy bag. And unfortunately, we cannot. We are non-medical, and there are agencies out there that are skilled. And so they have a nurse on the staff. And so we work alongside with skilled agencies to make sure that their client is getting the proper care. A lot of times people just assume if they're paying for a service that we can always do everything, and we cannot. I think it's important for people to understand that skilled care with medical treatment, physical therapy, occupational therapy, wounding, colostomy bags, feeding tubes, all of that has to be done through a skilled agency. We are non-medical, which is we're helping with companion care. We're running errands. We're doing laundry, linen changes, meal prep, watching TV, conversations, taking them to the mall if they want to do some mall walking. We take one client to the airport every shift. He likes to watch the airplanes. And so that's fine. We try to keep his independence. And it's a win-win for the family. They can keep working, and we're taking care of them with updates after each shift. Secondly, we do personal care. So again, when we're going into a situation and we're noticing that they haven't bathed in a couple weeks, we are able to come in. The girls are trained on different strategies to get the clients into the shower or do a sponge bath, something so that they remain clean all the time. We get on a schedule of when we're changing their pull-ups. We make sure that we start slowly if we need to with the client. We get to know them. We might walk them, help assist them to walk to the restroom. And then maybe the next time we don't. We kind of just go with the flow, but our goal is to always keep our clients clean and as independent as possible and keep their dignity. Sometimes we have clients that are very nervous about someone being in their home. So we have to take that as we are not going to come in our uniform. We'll come in street clothes. We'll come in as whatever the family requests that we're in, so that we're a helper. We want to be a helper. We don't want to scare anyone. We don't want anyone to feel that we're taking away their rights in the home. We could just come in and cook them a nice meal, and take them to the doctor. There's all different types of things that we do. And then if it gets to the point, then it gets to complex care where there might be some gait belts and liftings and turns and things like that. So then we bring in our crew that is trained in that, because we don't want anyone to be getting hurt, the client or the caregiver. So it's important to realize the sooner you get us in, the better, because we can start establishing that relationship, even if it's 4 hours, one time a week for a year. Yeah. And then if something happens, they already know us, they're comfortable with us, and then we can move in and change the schedule up so that we're able to accommodate what's needed.
And the level of care that you provide, I would say, is oftentimes that first level of care when a family realizes your mom, dad, aunt, uncle, whoever it is, needs some extra help. That's usually the first type of help they're looking like. And really it can be an ongoing type of help that they need. Yes. Sometimes the medical component isn't necessarily needed at first. Yes. Although we have had some clients on our side recently that have been, we mentioned before, feeding tube and things like that are sort of beyond the scope that you all provide. But they also could benefit from the services that
Mm-hmm.
you provide for the other.
Right.
the
A
other
lot of
clients.
calls we also get are people that have had a stroke or had an accident or a fall, and they've got to be discharged that day, or they have to be discharged the next day, and there's nowhere for them to go, and they want to go home. So again, the sooner you give us a call, the sooner we're able to come out, meet the client, do a personality, feel and get to know them, get to know who would be successful there, so that the client is comfortable with who's in their home.
That's another great segue. We in our business also get a lot of sort of last minute calls on things, so I think it's important to highlight how critical it can be to have a plan in place,
Mm-hmm.
right? So having these conversations early and starting to line things up before it's the crisis,
Mm-hmm.
because the crisis, it's the time, the clock's ticking,
Mm-hmm.
and we can get things done in a hurry.
Yes.
I know you all can get things done in a hurry
Mhm.
and get the help that's needed, but it's better. I think the outcomes are better when there's time to think about these things. From our perspective, I mean, just some of the estate planning stuff that we do takes a bit of time to implement.
Mhm.
And so we're called into a crisis situation. There are some options that are just off the table because
Right.
the timeline doesn't support.
Right. I think also in your industry and in mine, you have the whole dynamic of siblings. And when there's a crisis, everybody's kind of elevated. So I just really agree with what you're saying. Pre-plan as much as you can, because you're focusing on mom and dad. You're not focusing on, I can't be here on Tuesday and I'm going to be here. You should be here. It's a lot of unnecessary arguments start, or little just feelings are high. And so again, I think the more pre-planning, the better. And I believe you can pre-plan more with your services than mine. But again, whoever you meet with, we can start the conversation.
I think that's what it is. So I think you're right. Yeah, with what we do in the elder law and estate planning side, you can plan years in advance. But one of the things that we encourage our clients to do is, as they age, start having those conversations. What is your preference, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if your preference is to stay at home, for instance, and many of our clients want to be at home as long as they can.
Mm-hmm.
Well, know what that plan is. Maybe the first few steps are early on of having somebody cut your grass.
Right.
I mean, at some point, it might be time to give up the yard work.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, it's probably time to give up the laundry, especially, we've got a lot of suburbs around here with some older houses with the laundry in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Exactly.
going up and down the stairs can be a burden, carrying something.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've got, if there's balance issues in the mix,
Mm-hmm.
a fall down a flight of stairs onto a concrete floor in a basement. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you and I both know that that's the outcomes of that situation are not good.
Right.
So at least having the plan of, okay, we know that as things, progress, if things progress, that we're going to want to bring in help,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of knowing what that looks like, knowing the options that are
Right.
out there and what the different types of help are. Knowing, like you mentioned, that you can even start out on a smaller basis and
Mhm.
kind of build up over time. I think
Right.
is helpful.
Absolutely. And I also just think by having conversations, maybe just getting in the realm of the lingo and things like that, we're going to ask questions at an assessment. Do you have a DNR? Do you have a living will in place? Again, just to gain knowledge so that if it gets to a point where mom's getting in critical status or dad doesn't want to make decisions, things are already done, but at least we're kind of prompting the conversation, same as you. We got into a situation a couple months ago where we were called in and the family believed that the gentleman was going to get better in a couple weeks, like he was going to move out of state with them. And I started asking some questions and nothing was lined up. So it was eye-opening for them because the gentleman ended up passing away within 2 weeks. So it was very eye-opening for them to kind of dig into dad's affairs and realize there's nothing there. And so I believe we called you guys, and you guys actually did a home visit and got everything squared away for them. But those are the conversations that if you can pre-plan that, it's going to be all the better for everyone. Because, even with the DNR, a lot of us think if we have a DNR on the fridge, regardless of what it is, it says DNR, that it's valid. And we ran into a situation as well where that didn't work. So tell us a little bit about what's required in Kentucky for a DNR, because it was a big eye-opening experience for everyone.
It's a really, it's one of those topics that's very confused. So I was a police officer for 20 years, and I saw this firsthand in the same way that your caregivers are seeing it firsthand. So in Kentucky, if you want to do not resuscitate, so in other words, you don't want any life-sustaining measures taken on you for whatever, it's a personal choice that people make based on their diagnosis, their age, or personal beliefs, or whatever. A living will is an important thing to have. We have one in Kentucky that's in state law. It's a statutory living will, provides some direction. It can be a little confusing, so it's important to make sure that's done well. But the ambulance, they're not going to pay attention to that document. There is one specific form. There's an EMS DNR form in Kentucky, and that is the form that you need for any kind of on the scene, so to speak, DNR. That's all they're going to accept. They're not going to look at the living will. They're not going to look at the power of attorney. The EMTs or paramedics are going to look for that EMS DNR. If they don't have the EMS DNR, then their ethical responsibility is to do everything they can to save your life. And that's, in many situations, it's unfortunate. And I've seen the firefighters, I've seen the paramedics, the EMTs on these scenes, and obviously it's an emotional and frustrating thing for the family, but it's frustrating for them too, because they know that a family might want something different, but if it's not documented properly, they have to do what they have to do under their ethical obligations. So that was one that gets missed a lot. So a lot of people don't do their estate planning paperwork at all. Some people do, and maybe only do partial. And some people think that they've done everything, but they're missing a form like that, which really can make a difference.
Right, and I think it's just really important. Again, we're all in the business to serve. We're dealing with humans, we're dealing with emotions, we're dealing with so many things. And then you might have a diagnosis on top of that. I mean, this realm, senior realm, it can be very overwhelming for some. So again, we're all in the business to serve and to help, and you just have to ask. I just want to encourage our listeners not to be scared to ask questions. And if you ask me a question and I don't know the answer, I'm going to go to the right person to find the answer for you. We all have good referral partners. We all have good people we trust. Andrew trusts that I'm going to show up for a shift. That's very important, but that's what I stand behind, and we all have to differentiate ourselves. And so I'm going to refer to Andrew in regards to some of this legal realm of things that we're learning, we're seeing out in the field that need to be done in order for the family to have their wishes honored, right? And again, we learn something every day. And just please don't be scared to ask the questions.
I think that's really important. And ask the questions early, get the plan in place, and don't not only don't wait for your documents, but don't wait to bring in care until things have gotten bad. Bring in care early, and I think we see better outcomes.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
anything else important you think we should talk about today?
I don't think so. I think this has been a very informative session. I really appreciate the chance to talk a little bit about starting points and different types of care, just to kind of educate our listeners on new terms they might not be familiar with, because again, we're here to serve, we're here to help, and just please reach out to us.
Well, thanks for talking with me today. If people do want to reach out to you, what's the easiest way to get a hold of Homewatch?
Yeah, you can just give us a call at the office. The phones are open 24/7. It's 859-372-1200, and usually you can get an assessment set up within the next day.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you. I appreciate you asking.